folks, and welcome to the Horror Corner. Good evening, folks, and welcome to the Horror Corner. I'm your host, Sean Patrick Erschen. This week we are ranking the big three horror franchises, featuring the big three horror icons of Slasher Kingdom, that being Halloween with Michael Myers, um, A Nightmare on Elm Street with Freddy Krueger, and of course Friday the 13th with Jason Voorhees. So, ranking the three big horror franchises. All right, so we're starting with. So the tiers are best of the best, pretty good, half and half, just okay, and no need for a rewatch. So starting with the original classic Halloween from 1978, the masterpiece from John Carpenter. Now, obviously, that's going to go to the top of the list. That being the best of the best. There we go. So that's a no-brainer. Obviously, the original classic is going in best of the best. Now, what about Friday the 13th, the original Friday the 13th from 1980, which whenever you see people's ranking list always seems to be towards the bottom when it comes to Friday the 13th, which I'll never understand that because I absolutely love the original Friday the 13th. For me personally, it's in right there, best of the best. So, ha, my ranking, baby. And the original Nightmare on Elm Street from 1984, also a freaking masterpiece, which I absolutely love. Every time I watch it, I appreciate it more and more. I just think it's an absolutely phenomenal film. I love the score. Wes Craven's direction is incredible, and introducing the absolute horror icon Freddy Krueger, who might be the most popular horror icon of all time. Best of the best, of course. Now we get to the second films in each franchise is Halloween 2. Now, if you guys watch my channel, you know I love Halloween 2. And I don't know what it is, but as time goes on, people seem to like this film less and less. I don't know what it is. I just don't get it. I think the film is just phenomenal. I think it's the greatest horror sequel of all time. It's easily the best sequel in the Halloween franchise, in my personal opinion. It's the only film that matches the tone of the original film, and it continues right where the original film left off, and you don't see that much in horror franchises. I thought that was a really cool way to do it, and it just feels like a continuation of the original Halloween. So if you watch the two back to back, it's like one long movie, because it takes place in the same night. I'm putting Halloween 2 at best of the best. So here we go. Then we got Friday the 13th Part 2 from 1981. So 1981 was a huge year for the slasher films, where we saw a lot of the kind of Halloween knockoffs, so to speak. And yeah, Friday the 13th Part 2. I absolutely love Friday the 13th Part 2, and it goes in best of the best for me. I do think it's easily the best sequel in the Friday the 13th franchise. It gives you, it amps up the action. So there's more action, I think, in part two than the original, probably. It's just as scary. It's got that same dark tone, and it's still a serious horror film to me. And I love the sackhead Jason. I always loved the baghead Jason. I thought that was such a cool look. Even though you had seen it in other films like Dark Knight of the Scarecrow, and yeah, I still love it. I think it's a great one. I think it's scarier than the hockey mask, even. But the hockey mask look is more iconic to Jason Voorhees and more recognizable as Jason Voorhees. But yeah, this is where it all started, where Jason became the focal point. Jason became the killer of the series because, as you know, the original film from 1980, the killer was Jason's mother, Pamela Voorhees. Here's a controversial one, Nightmare on Elm Street Part 2, Freddy's Revenge. A lot of people don't like that they kind of changed the rules a little bit, where Jason possessed someone's body instead of it just being, Freddy is in your dreams. Here they kind of flipped the switch on that, where where Freddy actually possessed someone, and having the dude kill for him and do his dirty work, and Freddy's evil spirit, is trapped inside this young man. And yeah, there's a lot of people don't care much for this film. I do think it definitely has the scariest version of Freddy Krueger. I think it definitely continues that dark tone of the original Nightmare on Elm Street. Definitely a serious horror film, very scary. And it does have, some homoerotic undertones to it. So a lot of people consider it like the best gay horror film. So, it does have that in there, but yeah, I love the film. I really enjoy it. It is one of my favorites in the Elm Street franchise, but I can't quite put it at best of the best because it is flawed. It's far from perfect. So I will put it at pretty good. Uh, Halloween 3, Season of the Witch. This is another interesting one because it chose not to continue the story and the saga of Michael Myers. And, the plan was going forward for the Halloween franchise to be like an anthology series with different Halloween season based stories in each film. So it started with this guy who was this Halloween mask maker, and he kind of has these booby trap masks that he has the kids wear at Halloween time, so he can basically murder them all because inside the mask, it kills the children, kills anybody who actually wears the mask. It's kind of wild, and it is fun. I do think it's a lot of fun, and I enjoy the film in its own merit, as something separate from the Halloween franchise, even though it is the third film in the franchise. I tend to, whenever I watch it, I tend to just kind of watch it on its own. I find, and over the years, I have come to enjoy it. I first did not care for it. I was like, "Where's Michael Myers? This is weird," Um, and a lot of people say that they should have released it um, as something other than Halloween and not associated with the Halloween franchise. A lot of people think it should have just been called Season of the Witch. I don't know if I quite agree with that because I think if they did do that, people would think it's like a Halloween knockoff because it still has a lot of things that you associate with the Halloween franchise. It's got that John Carpenter score that sounds very much like it belongs in the Halloween franchise. And you got a lot of people that were in the Halloween films in the movie. Like you've got Jamie Lee Curtis doing the, loudspeaker over the town, and you've got Nancy Keys in it from the original Halloween. You got a lot. You got Charles Cyphers is in there, I believe. You got yeah. So there's so much that makes it feel like Halloween. You got Dick Warlock, who played Michael Myers in Halloween 2, plays one of the androids in Halloween 3. And I feel like the androids have a very Myers feel to them, you know. So yeah, there's a lot of stuff that make it feel like a Halloween franchise film, even though it doesn't have Michael Myers. So where am I gonna put this one? I'm gonna put it at uh, I'll put it at pretty good. And then you have Friday 13th Part 3, which I know a lot of people love this film because it's where Jason first got his iconic hockey mask. But for me personally, it was a big step down in quality as compared to the first two films. I felt like the first two films were serious horror, and they kind of went in a more campy direction, pun intended, being that the film takes place at a summer camp. But Friday 13 Part 3, I always feel is kind of hokey because they did the 3D thing, and I always thought that was kind of hokey as well with the old cheesy red and blue glasses that you wear. And certain scenes they filmed to cater to that. And I just never really got into that really. There's definitely some good kills in the film, but I think overall it just has that campy feel, and that's kind of um, it gets kicked off right at the bat when you hear that theme song that's got a kind of a disco feel to it. It's like um, that's indicative to me the tone of the film. It's like, okay, this is a more campy film. It's not as serious. So for me, Friday 13 Part 3 is just okay. That's it. It's not anything special. It's not anything great. I don't really care too much for it, really. And I do rewatch it just because it's part of the franchise. So I'm not going to put it in no need for a rewatch because, I do watch it once in a blue moon because it's part of the Friday 13th franchise. All right, let's get into the Elm Street 3 Dream Warriors. Now, I can't think of anybody who doesn't like Nightmare on Elm Street 3 Dream Warriors. Just seems to be universally beloved. And a lot of people feel it's the best film in the Elm Street franchise. um, Even though Freddy Krueger is a little bit more, is starting me to become a little bit more comical because each successive film in the franchise, Freddy Krueger becomes more and more comedic and a lot more one-liners. And but I feel like it was a good balance here. He was still scary, even though he was kind of cracking more jokes. But he was still scary enough. And I love this story with the Dream Warriors. I love that idea of having this group of people that are in the mental institution, kind of, and they all share the same dream of battling Freddy Krueger in their dreams. But that when they get together, they find that they can take him on. They can all get together and take on Freddy as a team. And in their dreams, they each have different, their own unique powers that they use against Freddy Krueger. And I thought that was such a cool concept. And of course, you do have Heather Langenkamp returning as Nancy, and I love her in the film too. She's like this kind of dream expert now, and she helps this group of kids, kind of try to master their dreams and master Freddy Krueger in the process, hopefully. Elm Street 3, I do think does belong in the best of the best. This Elm Street franchise definitely. Not only Nancy returning, you got her father returning too, played by John Saxon. So yeah, it's great to have those callbacks to the original film. All right, now we're getting into the fours. So you're getting into the late 80s, kind of now, 1988, where you had Halloween 4, the return of Michael Myers. So after Halloween 3, Season of the Witch was not successful at the box office, kind of bombed, the Michael Myers return, an anthology type of series. Then they shouldn't have did part two with Michael Myers once again, because people got used to Michael Myers. See, there's two films based on him and based on that story. So if they had just gone directly to Halloween 3, maybe there would have been, maybe people would have been able to accept it. But the fact that Halloween 2 had Michael Myers and was very successful, you know, they brought Michael back because Halloween 3 was kind of a failure. So the return of Michael Myers, Halloween 4, that's where they kind of separated John Carpenter. John Carpenter kind of left the series, you know, Halloween, of course. But yeah, kind of from here, Mustafa Akkad, who was the producer, kind of took on the series, and he was the sole person responsible for keeping it going, and funding it and, responsible for the direction of it, really. So he kind of made it his baby after John Carpenter and Deborah Hill left the series. And what are the results? We have a very welcome addition to the franchise in Danielle Harris, who is supposed to be Laurie Strode's daughter. And in this film, Laurie Strode apparently died in a car accident. So she was adopted. Um, yeah. And then Michael Myers is kind of chasing after her, but that kind of becomes a thing, she's chasing he's chasing his family members, he chased Laurie, now he's gonna chase his niece. And you still have Dr. Loomis returning to the series, which is a very welcome addition. I absolutely love Donald Pleasance as Dr. Loomis. And yeah, I think it's a really enjoyable film. I don't think it's really particularly stylish. What I love about the film is the performances. I love Donald Pleasance as Dr. Loomis. Danielle Harris is a great addition to the franchise as Jamie Lloyd, young Jamie Lloyd. And Ellie Cornell as Rachel Carruthers is also great. She's almost kind of like a Laurie Strode type of character, She's kind of Jamie's babysitter, Foster's sister, and she's really good in the film. I'm gonna put it at pretty good because I don't think it quite deserves to be best of the best. I do enjoy it though. Friday the 13th final chapter. Here's one that everybody seems to love, and a lot of people put this as the best film in the Friday the 13th franchise. I don't quite agree with that. I do enjoy the film, and I like that it gets kind of back towards a darker tone, whereas the third film was kind of, campy. Here we get a little more back on track. It's got more of a serious tone. There's still plenty of goofiness, but And I do like the Corey Feldman as young Tommy Jarvis, and I like that character and how that character continues throughout the series. Um, but some of the characters I feel are quite annoying. I know a lot of people enjoy the characters in this film and think that's the best part of it. For me, no, I don't enjoy the characters in this film. I think it kind of takes the film down a notch. They're just kind of these goofy, silly, they're just fodder for Jason Voorhees, and it's kind of annoying to me. But I love the gore effects. You got Tom Savini returning for the fourth film. Supposedly the final chapter, but it wasn't anywhere close to the final chapter, as we all know, because Jason did return many times after this. But yeah, I love the gore effects. Tom Savini did some great work. And I love the look of Jason, and I like the guy who played Jason was really good. Definitely one of the best. But to me, I'm gonna put it in half and half. I know it's probably shocking to some people out there, but I'm sorry, I'm not as huge a fan of the final chapter as a lot of people are. And then we have Nightmare on Elm Street for the Dream Master, the fourth film featuring Freddy Krueger. Now, he does get a little more comical in this film than he was in the last one, so yeah. And a lot of people feel like this is where the series starts going downhill. I don't agree with that. I really enjoy the Dream Master. I think that's a lot of fun. I think Freddy has some of his best one-liners. To me, I don't feel like he reaches the point of being too ridiculous. I feel like he's still got a pretty good balance. I love the makeup on him. And yeah, here a lot of people have issue with the fact that the Dream Warriors from the third film kind of get knocked off pretty early in this film. And the fact that they changed Kristen, the actor who played Kristen in the film here, she's played by Tuesday Night instead of Patricia Arquette. And some people have issue with that. I thought you did a fine job, and I do love the fact that Tuesday Night sings one of my favorite songs in the film, and that's "Running from this Nightmare, I'm running from this night." I love the score in Elm Street 4 too. There's a lot of great songs in there, a lot of cool rock and roll stuff. Just like the third film, there was a lot of cool stuff with Dokken doing the songs. I love the songs in part four as well. And it's got some of my favorite dream sequences in the franchise. So I'm putting Elm Street 4 in at pretty good. So yeah, higher rating than probably most people would put it. Now we're getting into the fifth film, so things get interesting here, that's for sure. Halloween 5, The Return of Michael Myers. A lot of people hate this film, but not me. I love Halloween 5, actually. I think there's a lot of great stuff in Halloween 5 that I feel like people miss. And that being, I do enjoy Don Shanks as Michael Myers. And I like the continuing relationship between Dr. Loomis and Michael Myers. They have some great scenes together. And I like how Dr. Loomis, as played by the great Donald Pleasance, he's kind of reached his wits' end at this point. He's really starting to lose it. And that shows quite a bit when he kind of gets frustrated with Jamie at times. And he does kind of yell at her sometimes because She's like, "Come on, you gotta help me. You gotta help me stop him once and for all." Like at this point, he's really getting tired of dealing with Michael Myers. He just wants to end it once and for all. For some people, that puts them off. They feel like he's too much, like he's just lost it. They can't deal with it. Um, and a lot of people don't like the fact that they didn't quite continue with the end of Halloween 4, where we did see Jamie, kind of the evil was passed on to Jamie from Michael after she touched him at one point. And at the end, you see her attack her stepmom, and then you see her at the top of the stairs with the scissors, and it's kind of they kind of leave it at that, and you think, well, is she going to be the killer in Halloween 5, and they don't really do that, because I feel like if they did do that, it might be a little goofy with just this little killer girl running around. I don't know if it would work. Or even if you had her as Michael's sidekick, it might have been interesting. But if you just had her as the sole killer, I don't know if that would have quite worked, with her just being a little girl. Maybe it would have, I don't know. But glad they didn't do that. I'm glad. And I was happy with the way they did it. They just left it with her, Jamie being traumatized by the events, and she was sent to kind of a psychiatric hospital where they were kind of trying to treat her, and she became mute. She became some traumatized by the events that she couldn't talk, and she kind of became a mute. And I thought that was kind of interesting. I thought it was an interesting way to handle it. But some people hate that. I thought some of the kills were great. I thought Michael was pretty badass in this movie. I like a lot about Halloween 5. Is it perfect? No, it's got a lot of issues, but I'm putting it in pretty good because I enjoy it. I feel like it's a great companion piece to Halloween 4, so I'm gonna put it right next to Halloween 4, actually. So just like I love to watch the original and part 2 back to back, I love to watch part 4 and 5 back to back. Anytime I watch 4, I want to watch part 5 right after, every time. And then you have another controversial one with Friday 13 Part 5, A New Beginning. uh, there's another one that's kind of, divisive for fans of the Friday 13 franchise because Jason was not the sole killer in this film. It was a copycat killer, yes. So I thought that was interesting. Maybe they didn't handle that aspect of it too well. It's kind of almost like an afterthought once it's revealed that it was this guy all along, this guy Roy, who, you know, who his son was killed, randomly, so he took his revenge and he donned the mantle of Jason Voorhees with the hockey mask and dressing up like Jason and killing people with the machete. But it feels like the typical Friday 13th movie, except for the fact that it's not actually Jason. And for me with this film, I really enjoy it. It's got some of the best kills in the series. It's a little bit sleazy too. It's got a lot of nudity, a lot of blood and gore. And you do get Corey Feldman returned as Tommy Jarvis only in the opening scene of the film. So then later on, we see grown up Tommy Jarvis played by a different actor. And Tommy Jarvis kind of goes to this kind of a group therapy type of program, a camp for people to go to who have mental problems, and he's trying to work through his issues and his obsession with Jason and all that. I think it's a fun film. I really enjoy it. I love some of the characters, especially Ethel. I thought was hilarious, and her son. I thought she was great. Yeah. So whereas part four, I didn't like the characters. I really liked the characters in part five. I think it's just a blast. I think it's one of the funnest films in the series. So I'm putting Friday the 13th Part 5 A New Beginning in pretty good. So yeah, another controversial one there. Then we have A Nightmare on Elm Street Part 5, The Dream Child. Now, for me, this is where the series goes downhill because this is the point for me where Freddy Krueger becomes too ridiculous, too comical. He's almost like a stand-up comedian at this point. It's ridiculous. And it's a shame because I feel like this film did have a lot of potential to be good because it did kind of have a darker tone at the beginning there. I like the stuff that they did with Amanda Kruger, how, you know, she gets raped by 100 maniacs. So, that I thought that was something interesting that you could have did more with, that you could have explored more with, and oh, this is how Freddy kind of turned out the way he did because his mother was raped by 100 maniacs. I thought that was something very dark and evil and interesting. But they just turned Freddy into a farce. Kind of a parody of what he was in the first two films. Yeah, so it had a lot of potential, but it did not live up to the potential, in my opinion. However, I do like Alice. Alice does return from part four, and um, she makes a great final girl. She takes Freddy on. And I do like her character, so she is one of the bright spots of the film. But other than that, it's just okay. I'm gonna put in just okay. Halloween 6, The Curse of Michael Myers, which is a very interesting one. And it's another kind of controversial one because the character of Jamie Lloyd kind of gets taken out early in the film, and she's not played by Danielle Harris, unfortunately. So they didn't have Jamie return played by Danielle Harris. They chose another actress. Um, because Danielle Harris, they kind of lowballed her. You know, they kind of explain it as him being part of this cult, the curse of Michael Myers, if you will. Um, and then you have two different cuts of the film. You have the theatrical release, which is very kind of confusing, and it's kind of a jumbled mess. And then you have the producer's cut, which I feel makes more sense. And yeah, I do prefer the producer's cut. A lot of people don't. A lot of people don't like what they did, how they ended the film in the producer's cut, where the evil was kind of passed on to Dr. Loomis at the end. A lot of people don't like that. They prefer the theatrical cut, which I feel like if they took some of the good things about the producer's cut and some of the good things about the theatrical cut and did a better mix of the film, like a better cut of the film, would be even better, I think. But as it stands, I prefer the producer's cut. I feel it makes more sense. But even then, I don't think it's that great of a film. I do think it's pretty flawed. Um, I didn't care much for the performance of Paul Rudd as young Tommy from the original film. I thought he was pretty. I think the acting overall was some of the worst in the franchise. Definitely got some great kills. I do enjoy George Wilbur's performance this time around as Michael Myers. He's definitely a more brutal version of Michael Myers, so I do like that aspect of the film. I thought the score was pretty bad. So yeah, that's kind of a mixed bag for me. But I have come to enjoy it more over the years, so I'm gonna put it at half and half. I think there's a lot of good things about it and some bad things about it. Now we're getting into the part sixes. So we have Friday the 13th, Jason Lives, which is one of my personal favorite in the franchise. And I think a lot of people feel that way. It did have kind of a meta feel to it because it was kind of poking fun at the slasher genre and kind of poking fun at the Friday the 13th franchise in particular. But at the same time, they take Jason very seriously. But there is a little bit more comedy in it, and I love that it has kind of a universal monsters aspect to it too. It's got kind of that gothic feel to it. I love that. I love that. It's got some of the best kills in the franchise, I think, and I love the look of Jason. I love the portrayal of Jason by C.J. Graham. This is my favorite version of Jason throughout the series. I thought he was just perfect. I loved he had all the mannerisms right. I just felt that his presence was very intimidating. This was a badass killer. You do not want to mess with this Jason. He will mess you up. Uh, yeah, I like the characters in the film. You had Tommy Jarvis returning, this time played by Tom Matthews. I think he does a great job. Even though it's kind of ridiculous that he's basically responsible for resurrecting Jason. But yeah, I love the opening. I think it's badass. I think it's awesome. Yeah, so I love Jason Lives, and I'm going to put Jason Lives at the top of the chain here in at best of the bests. So yeah, that's high up there for me in the Friday 13th franchise. One of the best in the series. What is not one of the best of the series is Freddy's Dead, because I think it's the worst in the series. I hate Freddy's Dead. Freddy's Dead, I absolutely cannot stand. I think it's ridiculous. It's stupid. I think Freddy is bad. Even Robert Englund's performance, I think, is bad in this movie, which I hate to say because, Robert Englund is always so great, but I feel even he phones it in. And I just feel his character is just a complete farce, a complete parody of what he was in the original. With even the dream sequences are goofy and ridiculous. Everything about this movie is goofy and ridiculous. Uh, However, one thing I do like about it is I like how they kind of delve into Freddy's background a little bit, and before he became Freddy, they show a little bit of him as just the Springwood slasher, and what happens to him. And they have Alice Cooper play his father, who's very abusive father, beats the crap out of him. I thought that was something that was interesting that they could have delved further into, but they just choose to focus on this goofy nonsense. So Freddy's Dead is the first one to go in, no need for a rewatch. Yes. It's been a long time since I've watched the film because I just can't stand it. So yeah, bottom of the barrel for me. Then we have Halloween H2O, bringing Jamie Lee Curtis back to the franchise as Laurie Strode. And at this point, Donald Pleasance passed away, unfortunately, shortly after the sixth film. So yeah, here we have Laurie returning to the series, which is a very welcome addition. It's great to have Jamie Lee Curtis back, and she has a great performance here. And I like what they do with the character. She's experienced a lot of trauma in dealing with the events of the first two films, and the fact that she found out that Michael was her brother, and that's really messing with her. And the fact that Michael killed off some of her best friends, so she has moved to I think it's California, I think, where she becomes the headmistress of the college there. Yeah, so her bookworm skills paid off, and now she's headmistress of the college. But at the same time, she's kind of an alcoholic, and she has kind of a tumultuous relationship with her son, played by Josh Hartnett in the film. Um, I do enjoy the film. I do think it's pretty solid. But the main thing about it is Jamie Lee Curtis coming back, and she has great performance. Outside of that, it feels very Scream-esque. The film is heavily influenced by Scream, I think, because, you know, towards the end of the 80s, the big slasher franchises were starting to lose their luster, and, I feel like Scream is the one that is responsible for resurrecting the slasher genre in the 90s. So Halloween H2O plays off that very much, so it's heavily influenced by that. And I think that kind of is a detriment to the film, because why does Halloween need to follow Scream? If there wasn't Halloween, there wouldn't be Scream. So it's like, you know, why is Halloween biting off another franchise? And I think that's part of the problem with the film that I have. And it's very light, it does seem like almost Halloween light, because it's not very gory. It's not very, it's kind of trying to be a little bit more like the original film, I guess. Not a whole lot of blood and gore. It feels almost very like MTV generation, like reality TV kind of generation. It's influenced by that too. Yeah, bringing in that kind of how television was at that time, when you had stuff like Dawson's Creek out, and, and crap like that. Yeah, it's influenced by that, and I think that hurts it too. I mean, it's got a solid cast of young actors, but it's not all that memorable to me. I don't think the kills are that memorable, and I think it's got probably the weakest version of Michael Myers. Michael Myers is almost like a pushover in this film. And I don't like how they had a bunch of different masks that they use. Like, why didn't they just stick to one mask? He got there's even a CGI mask at one point. Like, what the hell is going on with this mask? Why is it different every time you look at it? And at one point, you see his eyes clearly, and it's kind of off. Kind of puts you off. Like, it's trying, because you never usually see Michael Myers' eyes too much. He's always kind of in the dark, and you don't really see his eyes. You just see the mask. But here, you see it pretty clearly, and it looks weird. He's kind of got this fluffy hairdo. It's like, I don't know. It's a solid film, so I'm going to put it at half and half, because it does have a great ending. Probably the one of the best endings in the franchise, where we see what looks like a pretty definitive ending for Michael Myers, but they kind of ruined that all with the next film, which we'll get into. Then you have Friday 13th Part 7, The New Blood, which is interesting. It's Friday 13th Part 7, The New Blood. I have a lot of issues with the film, and this is where Kane Hodder, his first portrayal as Jason. So he kind of became the blueprint for Jason Voorhees with this film because he's really the only one to play Jason like multiple times. The thing about this film is at this time, so I think that definitely hurt the film because when it comes to Friday 13th, you want to see those kills, those creative kills. That's part of the allure of the Friday 13th franchise, really. And when you watch off screen and like they cut it short, they don't show the blood, they don't show the gore, which is unfortunate because I think this film could have been pretty good if they had the blood and gore in there. It's too bad that they can't release the uncut version of it because I guess that footage is lost. You know, they can't go back to it because apparently there is no master cut with all the gore and that they can't. That footage has been lost for all time. Apparently, I thought it was kind of interesting having Jason fight this girl that has telekinetic powers, so it's like Jason versus Carrie kind of thing. I thought that was kind of fun, and she really does a number on Jason, Tina. uh, Probably his biggest rival, other than, we did see him finally take on Freddy Krueger, but outside of that, in within the Friday 13th franchise, this is probably his biggest threat. Because they have a awesome final battle at the end, which is just a blast. So I do think it's a decent one. It's not great, I feel like the cuts on the kills really hurts it. So I'm gonna put it at just okay, I think. And then we have A Nightmare on Elm Street, the seventh film in the film, which is just called New Nightmare. It's not even called Nightmare on Elm Street. But we do see Wes Craven returning to the franchise to direct, and he gives it a very meta feeling to it. It's kind of a movie within a movie, and I thought that was an interesting way to do it. It kind of breathed new life into the franchise after it went so far downhill with Freddy's Dead. I felt this was a good way to, hit the reset button and do something different with it and creative. However, I feel like it could have been executed better. I like the idea of, instead of having the characters from the franchise, you had the people that played the characters in the franchise. So it's like the actors themselves, Robert Englund and Heather Langenkamp and Wes Craven himself, they're dealing with the monster they created in Freddy Krueger, who became a horror icon in film. And that kind of takes on like a meta feel to it. And it's something that he further explored, of course, in the Scream series. So this, this film, I feel, is kind of the basis for Scream, which would become Scream. But I thought it was a nice return to form, although it is very slow moving. Yes, it's definitely a slow burn. I feel like the pacing is off. So that's the one problem I have with it. I do love the look of Freddy. They took Freddy a lot more seriously here. He wasn't a jokester. He was very scary once again. I thought that was cool. So they did introduce Freddy, you know, they did bring Freddy to life and dealing with, him actually taking on the actress Heather Langenkamp, which was interesting, Thought that was pretty cool way to do it. But I do think it could have been handled better. The pacing is very slow, and I think that's a big problem with it. Other than that, I do think it's solid, so I am going to put it in half and half. It's pretty solid, but not great. It's got some problems. Now we're dealing with the bottom of the barrel here with Halloween Resurrection, which is probably my least favorite in the Halloween franchise. So that's definitely going in. No need for a rewatch. Just watch it once and that's it. I just think it's a joke. I think it's just a cheap product that they knocked out, just to cash in on the name of the Halloween franchise. Um, just because Halloween H2O was so successful, they couldn't just leave it at that because if any film makes money, they're going to do another one. That's how it goes with these series. And that's unfortunate because it ruined the great ending of Halloween H2O. And I thought it was silly, kind of making it almost like a reality TV show kind of thing, where they had this this crew, this camera crew, and television crew set up shop in Michael Myers' childhood home, the Myers house. And they had people just kind of go there and stay there, and they get scared just being there, because they set up they set up the scares, just have stupid things pop out at people, you know. They kind of jerry rig the house to have, scary stuff happen to people, in the house, and it becomes almost like a reality TV show kind of thing. Until Michael Myers himself shows up and spoils the party and starts picking off people one by one. How dare they enter Michael Myers' house? How dare they enter his home? So he picks them off one by one in grisly fashion. And I do think some of the kills are pretty good. And I think the look of Michael Myers is actually better than H2O. I think Brad Laurie was a better Michael Myers, so that is a positive. And another horrible thing they do in here is they do have Jamie Lee Curtis return as Laurie Strode, but she's taken out by a Michael Myers very early in the film, right at the beginning, actually. So yeah, they take an iconic character like Laurie Strode and give her a very unceremonious ending, and a lot of people did not like that. uh, yeah, because Laurie Strode is just iconic at this point, and Jamie Lee Curtis is iconic. So to have her come back just to get killed off right away, right at the beginning, is kind of unforgivable. The sad thing is that Rick Rosenthal came back to direct this, who directed Halloween 2, which I absolutely love. So I don't know what happened there. Yeah, but you did not do a good job with this film, and you have Busta Rhymes as like the main guy, taking on Michael Myers. He's the head of Dangertainment, who produces this reality TV show that they're filming. And he kung fu's Michael Myers, and kicks his ass. A lot of people have a problem with that, including me. So I just think this film is garbage and belongs at the bottom of the barrel. And I have no need to rewatch it. So therefore, it's going in no need for a rewatch. And then we have another kind of controversial one with Friday 13th Part 8, Jason Takes Manhattan. Uh, I thought the idea of Jason going to Manhattan was really fun. It's like, oh wow, imagine the damage he can do in Manhattan. It's kind of a campy idea, but it's fun at the same time. Uh, and I do enjoy what they do with it once he gets there, but it takes forever for him to get to Manhattan. Plus the fact that a lot of the scenes were filmed in Vancouver and not in New York City. It's only a few scenes that are actually filmed in New York City. A lot of it was Vancouver, Canada. um, but Jason takes a boat from Camp Crystal Lake to so they take Jason out of the Camp Crystal Lake, which you might say, well, that's something different. Get him out of that and have something different take place. So he gets on this boat on the way to Manhattan, but he most of the movie is just him on the boat killing people off one by one on the boat. And a lot of people take issue with that. I do think it has some good kills for sure. And you have Kane Hodder returning once again as Jason. And I do enjoy what he does with his performance as Jason. It's got some good kills, and yeah, I love what they do once they get to Manhattan. I do enjoy those scenes. But yeah, too much of the film takes place on the boat to Manhattan, so that's a big problem with it. And I think the characters in the film are kind of boring and uninteresting. I don't really like too much of what they do with the story. So yeah, I'm gonna put it at just okay. It is kind of a fun watch, but it's not a great film by any means. So I'll put it at just okay. I will pop it in once in a while, so it's not too bad. I do rewatch it once in a while. Now we have Freddy versus Jason. So at this point, the regular series of Nightmare on Elm Street was kind of over, and they just had Freddy taking on Jason Voorhees. So uh, this film was many, many years in the making, but it took a long time for it to actually get off the ground. But it was great to see it finally come to fruition in 2003. Now, with that being said, in 2003, you had a lot of CGI in films. They're starting to put CGI in a lot of horror movies, and that doesn't quite hold up when it comes to that aspect of the film. However, I do really enjoy this film. I love Freddy vs. Jason, actually. I think it's so much fun. And man, once they go at it, it's great. It's so much fun. I love the battle scenes between Freddy and Jason. They really go at it. They hack the hell out of each other. It's just a blast. A lot of great kills, and I do enjoy some of the characters in the film too as well. And I like how they kind of mash up both franchises, and I think they're both pretty faithful to each respective franchise too, as well as the characters of Freddy and Jason are extremely well represented, in my opinion. A lot of people don't like the fact that Kane Hodder didn't return to play Jason, that they kind of gave a different take on Jason in this film. He was kind of like almost like a Frankenstein's monster in this film, and I like that approach to it, where a lot of people didn't. And I like Ken Kersinger as Jason a lot too. So it's just my opinion. I'm not someone that feels like, oh, it has to be Kane Hodder every time. No, I thought this was a kind of a little bit of a different version of Jason, and so therefore I thought it was okay to have someone else play him. And it was a great return to form for um, Robert Englund as Freddy Krueger, in my opinion. I thought he had a great performance. He has some of his best lines, and I love the look of Freddy too. He looked awesome, and he has a couple different looks in this film too. Um, like there's a like towards the end of the film, he's like has this devilish look to him. His like face is all red, and he's got these devil's ears. He's got a really sick look. I think he looks awesome, and he is awesome. And I love Freddy vs. Jason. It's definitely got a lot of humor as well, so there is a little bit of camp in there. But yeah, I think it's just such a blast. So for me, Freddy vs. Jason goes in at pretty good. It's not quite best of the best level, but it is one of my favorite in both franchises. Uh, so we did get more film teen franchises, but you know, when it comes to quality, Jason Goes to Hell is bottom of the barrel for me. I did not enjoy this film at all. So Jason Goes to Hell goes in no need to rewatch for me personally. I didn't like it. I didn't care for it. I thought the concept was interesting having Jason, you know, they have him get killed early on, but his spirit possesses people and he kind of jumps from body to body, which was kind of an interesting concept, but I didn't like the execution. I thought it was kind of silly and goofy. And you don't see enough of Jason. You just see the spirit of Jason inhabit different people's bodies and do the killing for him. Almost like Elm Street 2 in a way, but I did not care for it. It does have some good kills though. It's got one of the goriest kills in the history of the franchise. But yeah, overall, I did not care for it. It's pretty bad. I didn't like the look of Jason either. I thought he looked probably the worst look of Jason. He's got this huge bubble head, like the mask is like there's almost nothing left of the mask, and he's got this huge head that's all like deformed and weird looking. I just didn't like. And then we had Jason X, which I also did not care for. I know a lot of people enjoy this film for what it is. It's super, super campy. That's right. I think I've only seen this film once, and it's in outer space. It's so incredibly stupid, and I just can't deal with it. It's too much for me. Too much cheese. Too much camp. Uh, I have my limits when it comes to cheese, and this is just too much for me. It's too ridiculous. Even though it's got a couple good kills in it, like the film, there is the one kill that everybody loves. When Jason slams this girl into a vat of like so, I forget what you call it, some kind of freezing acid or something, and cracks her skull, and she just cracks into a million pieces. I love it. But that's pretty much the only good thing about it is some of the kills are pretty cool. But as a film overall, it's just absolutely terrible. And now we get into the remakes of the big three franchises. And we're starting with Rob Zombie's Halloween remake from 2007. And to me, it was definitely a mixed bag. It's half and half. So I am gonna put it in half and half because there's a lot of things I like about it and a lot of things I don't like about it. It's equal. It's 50-50 for me. I did think that he did a good job in making Michael Myers scary again, whereas he become kind of a joke by the time Resurrection comes around. So here, Michael Myers is very intimidating and played by Tyler Mane, who is just huge. So this is the biggest version of Michael Myers. He's like this hulking monster almost like Frankenstein's monster. And definitely a very brutal, vicious version of Michael Myers. And this is a very bloody and gory, almost like a grindhouse version of Halloween. Um, and I kind of like what they did at the beginning, where you get to see a little bit of Michael Myers' background, a little of his childhood, and how he first killed his sister, and how he went to the insane asylum, and where he met Dr. Loomis, and kind of his descent into madness, and how he just completely shuts down. At first we see him, he's almost not, I won't want to say a normal kid, but he does speak. And we see Michael Myers speaking as a child, as a kid, going to school, and he gets picked on by the kids. He has mommy issues. His mom is played by Sherry Moon Zombie, of course. Um, and we see a lot of, his family is very kind of redneck, trashy, hillbilly family. It's kind of, his mom's a stripper, you know. Uh, so yeah, there's a lot I don't like about it. I don't like kind of that typical Rob Zombie thing where he always has to have these trashy redneck, hillbilly type characters in every movie he does. I think the language is very over the top with the F bombs and it's just too much. And yeah, I think the acting is very cheesy and campy a lot of the time. I didn't cast too much for Scout Taylor Compton as Laurie Strode in this film anyway. Even Danielle Harris, who does return as Annie in the film and not Jamie Lloyd, of course. She plays Annie from the original film. And even her, I thought she was a little bit campy and over the top. I thought she was much better in the second Rob Zombie film, which we'll get into. But yeah, overall, it's a very mixed bag. A lot of unnecessary cameos from horror veterans and stuff like that. It's like, ooh, look, it's that guy from Dawn of the Dead. It's that guy from, a lot of. It really takes me out of the film when there's all these silly cameos. Yeah, it's frustrating, because for every good thing, there's a bad thing. You know, I thought a lot of the lines were cringeworthy. Some of the dialogue was absolutely abysmal. So yeah, it's half and half for me. And Friday 13th, the remake from 2009, which we still have not gotten a new Friday 13th movie since 2009. Wow. But we are going to get a new series in Crystal Lake. So we are going to get a television series that's already being filmed as we speak. So that is happening, and that will be on Peacock, I believe. So we will get to see Jason coming back to the small screen anyway. But the so-called remake of Friday 13th, which I, I don't know if it's quite a remake, it's more kind of a mishmash of the first three films. Yeah, it's very quick. They get very quickly into the Pamela Voorhees story to kind of gloss over that quite quickly. It's much more about Jason, and we do see kind of the sackhead Jason from part two there at the beginning. And the interesting thing about the beginning is the opening scene is like 20 minutes long, and it's kind of jarring in a way because they establish these characters in the first 20 minutes, and then they're all picked off one by one in the first 20 minutes, and then we jump to a few years later, and there's a whole new series of characters. It's like, what the hell? And then they're kind of even more annoying than the first batch of characters. They're all just fodder for Jason Voorhees. There's not one interesting character in this movie except for Jason. That's the good part of this film is Jason is handled very well, I think. He's played for more for realism, as if Jason was a real person and not this indestructible monster that they kind of built him up to be in the franchise. He's much more human here. Um, and he grew up in the woods, so he's got these survival instincts. He's one with the woods. He's like lived out in the wild all this time, and he's learned how to take care of himself. And he's got this kind of underground layer where he takes his victims, which is pretty cool. So Jason himself is what makes this movie watchable. Anything else is just it's got a lot of silly humor. It very much it has the goofy side of the Friday 13th franchise, and it puts that to the forefront. And I don't really like any of the characters in this movie. They're just completely disposable. You just want to punch him right in the face. He's super annoying. This cocky, arrogant dude that's just like, every character in this movie is annoying and disposable. And yeah, I think the look of the film is cool and it's got some cool kills. And Jason is kick ass, played by Derek Mears this time. So I'll go, I think, half and half. Well, I don't know. I think the portrayal of Jason and what they do with the character is enough, I think, to put it at half and half. Otherwise, it would have been just okay. Now, the Nightmare on Elm Street remake from 2010. Wow. Ugh, what can you say about this film? As it is abysmal. There is no need for a rewatch in this one. Watch it once and that's it because it is crap. It is just product. It was just like Halloween Resurrection, just a film that they knocked out to cash in on the name of the Nightmare on Elm Street franchise. Um, and and to try and make a quick buck on the recent, surgence of remakes, and there were a lot of remakes going on at this time. It was like the age of the remakes. You had the Psycho remake, you had the Halloween remake, you had the Friday 13th remake, you had the Texas Chainsaw Massacre remake. There were all kinds of remakes going on, and this is the worst of the bunch, in my opinion, as I did not care for this film at all. Um, you do have Jack Earl Haley this time around playing Freddy Krueger, and I have to give him credit because he did try and make it his own. He tried to give a different kind of spin on Freddy Krueger. He tried to bring his own take on the character. But the problem with that is the look of Freddy Krueger. Like the makeup was really bad. I didn't like the makeup job, and sometimes when you see his face, it's like CGI and it looks really bad. Though, like, oh, I do like some of the dream sequences, although they do steal a couple from the original franchise and the original film. However, the characters are very boring and cookie cutter and just fodder for Freddy, to pick off. Um, I mean, they rip off one of the kills straight from the original Elm Street, So they do bite on the original film quite a bit. Although the way they present Freddy Krueger in this film is interesting because they allude to him being a pedophile, as where they didn't quite get into that in the original series, which made it kind of okay to root for the villain in a way, but you cannot root for this villain because he was just looked at as a child killer originally, much like the recent Black Phone with Ethan Hawke. He's just you don't know if he's a pedophile or anything. They don't get into that. He's just kind of a kidnaps kids and kills them. He could be, but we don't know that. And they never kind of get into that. And they never did in the Elm Street series either. But here they put it out right in the forefront. Plus, there's an idea that he might not actually be the killer. That he actually might be innocent. They kind of allude to that. And that put people off too. So there's a lot of negatives about this film. It's not particularly stylish. It's not particularly interesting. It's just kind of paint by numbers. Next up, we have Rob Zombie's Halloween 2, which I did not care for at all. So while I did like some things about his first take on the Halloween remake, I did not care for his part two. Um, there are a few things I like about it. Um, I like the opening scenes, where Michael's stalking Laurie in the pouring rain. That looked really cool. And he chases her through the hospital. And again, once again, this is a very brutal, vicious Michael Myers just hacking the crap out of people. You even hear him a little bit. You hear him grunting a little, and he's hacking the crap out of someone with the butcher knife, which is kind of weird. You don't hear that normally. You don't really hear Michael Myers. Yeah, it's a very jarring film. There's a lot of bad stuff. I hate the dream sequences with, you know, Michael's mother and the white horse, played by Sherry Moon Zombie. I didn't think there was any need for that. There was no need for her to be in the movie. It was almost like Rob Zombie just finding an excuse to throw his wife in there. Ugh. And then once again, you're giving Michael Myers mommy issues, which he never had in the original franchise. We didn't know anything about his parents in the original franchise. We know very little about Michael's background, even though each film they kind of give little things away, but they never get into his family or anything other than Laurie Strode being his sister, which they do continue here, which is one of the other things I like that Rob Zombie did decide to keep the brother sister angle. And I do kind of like what they do with that here because I did like Scout Taylor Compton's performance in this movie. I thought she was much better. And you really got to see her trauma in dealing with the events of what happened to her in the original film. It really messes with her, and it really messes with her the fact that she finds out that Michael is her brother. That really, really messes her up, and she goes to a therapist, and yeah, those aspects I do like about it, and I do like Danielle Harris's performance in this film as well. Where I didn't think she did such a great job in the first one. She's much better in this film, and I liked her dynamic and her relationship with Laurie, how they kind of move in together. And Laurie is living with Annie and her father, who is the sheriff, who is Sheriff Brackett, of course. And Sheriff Brackett is played by Brad Dourif, who, he's pretty good in the film. I didn't mind him. There is one scene that is kind of crazy. When Annie does finally get killed by Michael Myers in the film, and it's vicious and brutal. Um, there's the scene where he finds the daughter dead, and it's very extreme, his reaction. But once again, this film feels even more grindhouse than the last film. It's just so over the top with the blood and gore, and again, cringeworthy dialogue. The trashy redneck hillbilly characters once again, and this is just even more of that. And the film feels very badly edited to it. It feels like a music video, like one long music video, you know. And Rob Zombie had directed several music videos, so that's what this film feels like to me. It doesn't feel like almost doesn't feel like a movie. It's like a music video. And the one big huge mistake that it makes is it turns Dr. Loomis into a jerk, someone that you don't like. And that is like a cardinal sin for me when it comes to the Halloween franchise. You're not going to disgrace the legacy of Dr. Loomis and Donald Pleasance like that. Come on, man. That's a slap in the face to the fans, to me. And I was offended by that actually. So, uh, yeah, I'm gonna say no need for a rewatch. All right, so now we're left with the Halloween David Gordon Green trilogy because at this point, all the other franchise haven't had a movie in a long time. We haven't seen another Elm Street or another Friday 13th film in a long time. So we did get three new, not one, but three new Halloween films. We got a whole trilogy directed by David Gordon Green. So yeah, initially when Halloween 2018, when it was announced, um, it was a mixed bag for me because when I found out that they were going to ignore every other sequel in the franchise and just focus on the original film that was just going to be continuing from the original film as if none of the other sequels happened. And I didn't like that because, as you know, I love Halloween 2. I'm a huge fan of Halloween 2. And for that to be not canon anymore really kind of pissed me off, actually. While I was excited at the fact that they were bringing Halloween back and bringing Jamie Lee Curtis back as well, that part of it was exciting. And the fact that they were bringing back kind of the more classic style of Michael Myers, whereas, We had kind of gotten away from that with the Rob Zombie films and with a couple of the later films in the franchise, kind of got away from that original version of Michael Myers. So here we were kind of bringing that back, and I was excited about that. But there's a lot. Again, Halloween 2018 to me is kind of a mixed bag. It's kind of half and half. So that's where I'm going to put it, at half and half. I was happy that they brought him back, and I did like a lot of what they did with the film. I think Jamie Lee Curtis is excellent in the film. I like what they did with her character, how, the trauma that she'd been through to the point where it drove her nuts, and it made her like this. It really hardened her, and now she really has her guard up, to the point where she's become like this Sarah Connor kind of character, where she's a survivalist. She's an expert on weapons, and yeah, and she's made her house into like almost like a fortress to protect herself from Michael Myers in the case in case he does end up breaking out and trying to get her. And of course, that's exactly what happens. Michael Myers does escape. They had the horrible idea of transferring Michael Myers from Smith's Grove Sanitarium to another facility. And of course, on the bus ride to that facility, he escapes, and kills a whole bunch of people. And then Michael Myers is back on another holiday rampage at Halloween time. And yeah, to me, it's a mixed bag. There's a lot of things I like about it. The look, everything they do with Michael Myers and how they handle the Michael Myers character is great. I love what they do with it. And I love the portrayal by James Jude Courtney. He just gets it. He gets Michael Myers and he plays him to perfection. He just takes a lot of what, Nick Castle and Dick Warlock did in the first two films, and brings it back 40 years later. He takes all of the best things, the best versions of Michael Myers, and it gives his own spin in the character as well. He has his own kind of take as well. I love the look of Michael Myers. I love the mask is awesome. How it's kind of weathered because it's 40 years old now. And Michael Myers is older, and but still he's an unstoppable badass. Uh, and it's Laurie's mission in life to stop 3 years. Trained her daughter to be that way too. Her daughter Karen, played by Judy Greer in the film, and that's alienated her from her daughter. She actually lost custody of her daughter, and their relationship is very kind of estranged at this point. But she is kind of close with the granddaughter, Allison. They do kind of have a bond, and she does try and connect with her, where the relationship with her daughter is kind of strained. So I like that dynamic of it as well. It was interesting, to see her dealing with her daughter and her granddaughter and their kind of fractured relationship, but it's interesting. And as I said, Jamie Lee's performance here is one of the best in the franchise, and may even be the best in her one of the best performances of her career, I would say. And that's one of the bright spots. The negatives are anytime they try to use comedy in this film, it's absolutely atrocious and embarrassing and cringeworthy. Some of the dialogue is very cringeworthy. Some of the characters are super annoying. much like the Rob Zombie films, a lot of the poorly written dialogue, But David Gordon's direction in this film is really good. I think it looks great. It's got great atmosphere. I like the tone of it, and yes, I love a lot of the scenes where Michael's kind of in the background and they're using that suspense too. It's got some good suspense to it. But there's a lot of stupid stuff like this character, Dr. Sartine, who's like the new Dr. Loomis, you know, how it's just kind of ridiculous. uh, and they use him as kind of a plot device to bring him to Laurie so they can have that battle. And Dr. Sartine is basically obsessed with Michael Myers and trying to get inside his head and why he is the way he is, and he does that. There's that ridiculous scene where it appears as if Michael Myers is dead, and then he grabs Michael Myers' mask and puts it on, and it's like, oh, and it looks so stupid and ridiculous. And he becomes the bad guy, and he literally drives Michael Myers to where Laurie Strode is at. It's just a stupid like plot device. And they got these um podcasters that are doing a true crime story, and that's how they decide to focus on Michael Myers and what happened, and they try and go to the Smiths Grove to meet up with Michael Myers to try and get some information out of him, but of course he doesn't talk. So then they go to Laurie Strode and try and get some information out of her, but she kind of clams up and doesn't give them anything. And they just she just takes their money and leaves. But yeah, I love the kills in the film are great for sure. Like I said, everything with Michael is awesome, but there's a lot of stuff I don't like about it. Like the sheriff is useless in the film, whereas Sheriff Brackett, he was very intense and very much a part of trying to take Michael Myers down, working with Dr. Loomis. This sheriff here is just completely useless. And a lot of the characters are completely useless. And the comedy is cringeworthy and the dialogue is cringeworthy. So yeah, it's a mixed bag. And then we get to Halloween Kills, which is my personal favorite in the trilogy. Most people would say 2018, but for me, it's Halloween Kills. So where am I gonna put Halloween Kills? I think I might put it at pretty good. Yeah, because it's just my favorite of the David Gordon Green trilogy. There's a lot to love about Halloween Kills. It's a lot like Halloween 5 in that way for me, because yes, I acknowledge that there is some stupid, ridiculous things in there, but there's some great stuff in there too. And I think that exactly what those flaws are, but the good stuff is great. You got those great flashbacks to 1978, and I love how they filmed that, how they shot that, and bringing back the old classic Michael Myers mask. The 1978 version of Michael Myers was really cool. And you even got to see Dr. Loomis come back, and I thought that was awesome. And and how they kind of caught him and arrested him. It was really awesome. I love that. It's very authentic feeling and looking. And I love once again, I love what they do with Michael Myers in this film, even more in this film because he's almost like the ultimate slasher badass in this film. He's completely unstoppable, you know. And they bring back that kind of lore of Michael where how, you know, maybe he might be supernatural, you know. He has that element to him in this film, very much so. He's very like this unstoppable killing machine, you know, like the Terminator. We just see him fillet people in this movie, and this is definitely the most brutal of the three, and maybe the most brutal film in the Halloween franchise. I mean, this film is called Halloween Kills for a reason, with an emphasis on the kills because there's a lot of them, and they're brutal. I love the stuff they did do with the Michael Myers house too. How they have this couple living there, this young gay couple, and I think they're a lot of fun, you know. And I actually do like the humor in this film, contrary to the 2018 version. I actually like some of the comedy in this movie. I think it's kind of funny at times. Um, but yeah, there's the mistaken identity thing, and you know, much like Halloween 2 from 1981, Laurie Strode is kind of just in the hospital at this point for most of the film, just like she was in Halloween 2. So that kind of takes it down a notch, and I don't care as much for her performance in this film. I think she kind of almost becomes like the Dr. Loomis, providing a lot of exposition into the psyche of Michael Myers and kind of building up Michael Myers as kind of the supernatural being, you know, saying stuff like, you know, every time Michael kills, he transcends, and stuff like, you know, a normal man would not have survived that fire. So she kind of alludes to him being supernatural, only for them to just completely dispose of that idea in the third film, which we'll get into. But yeah, and I hate when they spend a lot of time on this, you know, the mob mentality, you know, all the townsfolk get together to try and, you know, create this lynch mob to take out Michael Myers. And I think the idea of that is interesting. You know, we saw a little bit of that in Halloween 4, The Return of Michael Myers, but here they kind of go full blown with that aspect. And they bring the Tommy character from the original film back, and as played by Anthony Michael Hall in this film, he kind of leads the charge of this lynch mob with their their pitchforks and flame throwers. They all gather together, you know, and they chase who they think is Michael Myers, this escape mental patient, and they track him down, and they spend a lot of time on that, and of course it ends up not being Michael Myers, and they kind of are responsible for his death. So that whole scene was very cringeworthy and stupid, I think. And yeah, so the idea of the mob mentality of the town getting together to take out Michael Myers was interesting, but very badly executed. And yeah, there is a lot of cringeworthy dialogue once again, just like the 2018 film. Maybe even more so in this film, but uh, I find it to be fun, a lot of fun. You know, there's a great scene where Michael comes out of the fire, you know, from the end of 2018 there. When he comes through the flames and he just takes out the entire fire department by himself. So yeah, they really build up Michael to be this unstoppable monster, you know. He takes out the entire fire department by himself, you know. So And that's why I'm so bothered by what they do in the third film. But yeah, Halloween Kills is gonna go at pretty good. It is my favorite of the three. Now we get to Halloween Ends, which is a very controversial entry in the franchise for sure. Much like Halloween 3 in a way, because they did try and do something completely different with this film. Now, in the advertising, in the commercials for the film and the build up to it, it was all about Michael and Laurie having that big final battle, the ultimate battle, and that's what they sold this movie on. But in reality, the film was completely different. It was nothing like that. I mean, that is in there at the end of the film. We do get the final battle between Michael Myers and Laurie Strode, but the majority of the film is about a completely new character that they did not introduce in the franchise at all. They just started right here. This young guy by the name of Corey Cunningham, who is a babysitter, and he babysits this young kid and ends up being unwittingly responsible for the kid's death. And that really messes with him, and that kind of makes him go down a dark path. And then he ends up running into Michael Myers, and he ends up finding where Michael Myers has been for the last 4 years. He's been kind of hiding out in this cave. Nobody else knows that. Nobody knows where Michael is. He just kind of disappeared after the events of Halloween Kills. And at the end of Halloween Kills, as I mentioned before, with the lynch mob, the town getting together to take out Michael Myers, they did actually confront Michael Myers, and they did beat the crap out of him, and they shot him, and they stabbed him, and they did a number on him. And it seemed as if Michael Myers was dead. It seemed like they had killed him once and for all. But in classic Michael Myers fashion, he just sits up and gets up and absolutely obliterates all of them, which I loved. Which I love that. A lot of people didn't like that. A lot of people thought, "Well, that's ridiculous." But I thought that was awesome. That was just like classic Michael Myers. But here they kind of here Michael Myers is presented as very much vulnerable. This is a much more vulnerable Michael Myers. They show the damage that was done at the end of Halloween Kills. It really takes a toll on Michael, and he's out of commission for 4 years. Basically, he's been hiding out in the cave, and he's all messed up, and he was trying to recover from his injuries. And he's a broken man at this point, and he's much older now, and his age is creeping up on him, and his injuries are creeping up on him. This is a very we've never seen a Michael Myers this vulnerable, which is jarring to me. he's never been he's never been this weak. He's never been, which is in complete contrast to what he was in the last film. In the last film, he was like the ultimate slasher killer, this unstoppable killing machine. But here, he's basically just a broken down old man. He's very much human. So that's what I don't like. They built him up in Halloween Kills to be like supernatural again, but and it turns out he very much is not supernatural. He's just a man. And like I said, the stuff they did with Laurie Strode talking about him as if he were more than a man, you know, taking on the Dr. Loomis role, basically, building him up to be this force of evil, this unstoppable force of evil. only to present him in this way in Halloween Ends as just a man, you know. And Laurie even says that at the end, "You're just a man, you know. I've ran from you all these years, but it turns out you're just a man," you know. And I didn't like that, you know. I want Michael Myers to always have that aura of, is he supernatural? Is he an unstoppable force of evil? But he's not in this movie. And then getting back to the Corey Cunningham character, I like some of what they do with the character. I just wish they had introduced him in the past two movies. They could have at least introduced him a little bit in 2018 and maybe a little bit more you know, in Halloween Kills. They could have had him maybe start to form kind of a relationship with him and Allison. Because, yeah, they have this romance with him and Allison. He meets Allison and he meets Laurie, and he ends up having a romantic relationship with Allison, which there's no chemistry there. It's kind of boring and not executed very well. Once again, this film is very brutal with the kills and the violence for sure. That aspect it is handled well. And we see very little of Michael Myers in this film. So if you're looking for Michael Myers, this isn't really the best film for you to watch because he's barely in it. He's only in it, probably has 5 minutes of screen time, maybe. Most of the film is focused on this Corey guy. And as I said, his descent into madness is played up even more once he meets Michael Myers. He tries to get inside the head of Michael Myers, and that influences him to become pure evil, and he kind of takes on the mantle of Michael Myers. He even takes Michael's mask and goes out as Michael Myers and starts killing people. He also does go on a little bit of a killing spree with Michael Myers too, which was kind of funny. That's Michael Myers being the teacher and him being the pupil. And I thought that was kind of interesting. And he does have this kind of cool mask himself, this kind of clown mask. I thought was really cool looking. I thought they could have just did it that way and just have Michael with kind of his sidekick being Corey. That would have been cool. And then eventually could have had, Corey take over from Michael, where Michael's, all broken down now and beaten up. Maybe they could have went there with the franchise. They could have had him take over, but they don't. They end up just having Michael Myers kill him at the end. Laurie does a number on him and stabs him because, she does end up squaring off against Corey at the end, and she takes him out. And then Michael comes back just in time to have their big final battle at the end, and he kills off Laurie himself. And they have their big final battle at the end, which at this point, what they did with that, I enjoy how the film is called Halloween Ends, and they do stick to that because they do finally have the balls to kill Michael Myers once and for all in a very definitive way. They throw him in the wood chipper machine. Like, he ain't coming back from that. you know. Uh, so that's the way it should be. This guy has terrorized Haddonfield for 40 years now and killed off families, whole families, and he's killed so many people in that span of time that rightfully so, he deserves to be killed and destroyed and disposed of in a very definitive way. And I like how they did it. How they got all the townspeople together to carry him over their heads and throw him in the wood chipper machine. And I like that. That was the way it should be. So that's one of the things I did like about Halloween. And so there are some things I liked about it, but again, it's a very mixed bag for me. So same as Halloween 2018, I'm gonna put it in half and half. There are some things I like about it. I like that they did try something different because how many times have we seen Laurie versus Michael already throughout the years and throughout the franchise? So it was kind of refreshing to see them do something different, but I thought they picked the wrong time to do it. You don't do that in the last film, not only in the trilogy, but of the franchise, really. You introduce a new character out of nowhere that was not established before. So yeah, I like I like the balls of David Gordon Green to try something different, and and at the same time, I give him credit for ending it on a very definitive note. It kind of ends that Laurie and Michael saga, but at the same time, they would try to do something different, but it just wasn't. It was just too late to execute something that different, and it was very jarring, and it was very disrespectful to the Michael Myers character for sure. Because if you like Michael Myers, you're not gonna like how he's portrayed in this movie. I don't know how you can. And there is one supremely cringeworthy scene involving Michael Myers where actually there's a couple, where Corey kind of fights Michael Myers off and takes his mask and he just kind of overpowers him. It's like, what, really? Some random dude is overpowering Michael and Michael's just a pushover. Like, what? And then there's the one scene where Corey kind of lures this guy and that he's had, a little problem with a couple tiffs he had with this guy. So he kind of lures that guy into Michael's cave to kill him off. So he kind of gives Michael a knife, and this is the first time Michael's killed anybody in a long time, in 4 years. And you see him feel it, like almost as if killing someone is giving him more power, like which I thought was just ridiculous. It's like stupid. It was such a cringeworthy scene. Like after he kills the guy, he starts hulking up like he's Hulk Hogan or something, like "Arr," I thought that was so bad, like so bad. One of the most embarrassing scenes in the franchise for me. So yeah, there's lots of cringeworthy stuff in Halloween Ends, and again, some cringeworthy dialogue. The relationship between Corey and Allison was kind of lame. I thought Allison was kind of lame, to be honest, in this movie, because I really liked her character in the first two films, but here she was just kind of like, rebelling against her mom and rebelling against Lori. At this point, and and also I have to mention Jamie Lee Curtis. I didn't care as much for her performance in this film either, because I thought it was just ridiculous that her daughter was killed by Michael. We jump a few with her life. She's she's ridding herself of Michael Myers. She's ignoring Michael Myers. She's just going to move on with her life and try and enjoy life and enjoy her time with her granddaughter and bonding with her and just forget about Michael Myers and forget about what he did to your daughter. He murdered your daughter, and you're just going to let it go like that and you're going to move on with your life. And guess what? Michael Myers is still out there. you know, it's not like Michael Myers is dead and you can move on with your like Michael Myers is still out there. He survived. So you're just gonna ignore that, especially when you had the 2018 version of Laurie Strode when she's this badass survivalist, and you're just gonna, you know, forget about what he did to your own daughter. Like, hell no, you're gonna search the ends of the earth to find this guy and kill him yourself. Like, that's what I would do. But you would think that's especially what this version of Laurie Strode would do. She would hunt him down to the ends of the earth and do anything possible to kill him. But no, she's just gonna move on with her life. I just think that's so stupid and so dumb. And I didn't like her performance as much as the movie goes on. She gets a little bit better once she does realize that Michael Myers is out there. She starts to kind of get back to form, but early on, I thought her performance was pretty cringeworthy. And they brought Lindsay Wallace back, who I thought was very good in Halloween Kills. I feel like they could have did a lot with her, and here they just kind of, she's just basically a cameo, really. So yeah, all right, guys. So that is it. Ranking the big three slasher franchises: Halloween, A Nightmare on Elm Street, and Friday the 13th. Yeah, that was a lot of fun, guys. I hope you enjoyed this. And thank you for joining me, Sean Patrick Erschen, in the Horror Corner. Tune in and stay scared. Folks, don't forget to grab your Sean Patrick Erschen gear and represent the Horror Corner. Also, check out these awesome mugs we have, perfect for your coffee. And definitely check out the Horror Hangout live stream t-shirt and represent the legacy of the Horror Hangout. Check out the link in the description below this video.